Good afternoon, everybody. Anthony Aniano here from RotoBaller Radio and RotoBaller.com with our fantasy football Week 10 sleepers and value plays. Maybe some players flying under the radar, players you're on the fence about starting in your season-long league, or players who I think are underpriced in DFS games. Don't forget, head over to RotoBaller.com. Sign up now for any of our premium passes, including the NFL, NBA. Save at checkout using the promotional code ACES and get all the great content there, including team sync tools, lineup optimizers, as well as waiver wire reports, trade analysis, Slack chat, whatever you're looking for. RotoBaller.com, the place to be. Like and subscribe right here to the RotoBaller YouTube channel, and download the RotoBaller app. It's free. 6 great sports right there in the palm of your hand. DFS or season-long formats, whatever you're looking for help with, RotoBaller.com has you covered. All right, so Week 10 of the fantasy football season. Playoffs slowly approaching. Don't forget, we have 4 teams on a bye this weekend. Miami, Kansas City, Philadelphia, and the Rams. So some heavy hitting fantasy assets not playing this week. All right, we're going to start at the quarterback position. My first quarterback to mention today, Brock Purdy of the San Francisco 49ers, going against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Purdy's priced at $5,700 on DraftKings and averaging 18.9 fantasy points per game. Now, Purdy going up against that Jaguar defense. Jaguars 28th in the league against opposing quarterbacks. They allow just under 275 passing yards per game, 274.9 to be exact, and allow on average 22.6 fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks, including 11 passing touchdowns so far this season. Jacksonville's terrific against the run, only 79 rushing yards a game. Could be a little bit of, I'm not too worried about Christian McCaffrey, but the strength of that Jaguar defense is the run defense. Throwing against them is an option. Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Brandon Ayuk, Kittle should be able to put points on the board in what should be a fun game Sunday against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, if you don't like Brock Purdy, second player I wanted to mention at the quarterback position is Geno Smith of the Seattle Seahawks against the Washington Commanders. Geno Smith averaging only 14.1 points per game in DraftKings formats and is priced at about the same as Brock Purdy, $5,800. Washington Commanders are 30th in the league against opposing quarterbacks, and that means for them that they're allowing 25 fantasy points per game and have allowed 19 passing touchdowns, highest in the league alongside the Chicago Bears. The Washington Commanders allow 264.9, just under 265 passing yards per game. Geno Smith with DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith-Njigba, who we'll talk about in a little bit, should be able to throw the ball against this Washington Commanders defense. Now, at the running back position, 2 running backs to mention. The first one's a little more pricey and really more of a season-long format, but Ramondre Stevenson of the New England Patriots. And the reason I mention him is because I get a lot of questions on Twitter or in social media. Should I play Ramondre Stevenson? That Patriot offense has not been good. Ramondre has definitely disappointed considering where you drafted him in season-long formats this season. However, this week against the Indianapolis Colts could be a nice opportunity for Ramondre, coming off of a good game last week as well. DraftKings has him at $5,600, 12 points per game. So even that might be a little bit less if you don't want to pay up for the top-tier running backs. Ramondre at $5,600 is a bit of a value. Indianapolis is 28th in the league against opposing running backs. They allow 26.1 PPR points per game to the running back position and a total of 12 touchdowns to running backs, 11 rushing and 1 receiving touchdown allowed by the Colts defense to opposing running backs. They allow 125.6 rushing yards per game. So in a PPR format, I've always liked Ramondre Stevenson. He has disappointed, but this could be a nice matchup this week against the Indianapolis Colts. Now, if you're saying $5,600 is too much for me, Ramondre's too obvious, who else do you have, Anthony, at the running back position? We'll take a look in Atlanta at Tyler Algier. Yeah, let's be honest. Atlanta has not figured out that Bijan Robinson should be the primary running back there. It's almost a 50-50 split in terms of carries with he and Bijan. Okay, last week, Tyler Algier, 12 carries, 39 yards and a touchdown. Bijan Robinson, only 11 carries, 51 yards. And then you got that convoluted Arthur Smith explanation as to why Bijan doesn't get work in the red zone. Okay, Bijan fumbled last week. Algier came in the game then. 2 weeks ago, over the last 2 weeks, I should say, Bijan 22 carries, Tyler Algier 20 carries. Now, Bijan's done more with his carries, but they both found the end zone in that time. Now, Algier is only $4,700 on DraftKings, and that's what caught my eye, was that price under $5,000, averaging 8.4 points per game. And going against the Arizona Cardinals, you want to take advantage of that. Cardinals are 30th in the league against opposing running backs, allowing 27.5 PPR points per game to the running back position. They've allowed 13 total touchdowns to running backs, 9 on the ground and 4 through the air, and allow 128.7 rushing yards per game. Bijan's in your lineup. Tyler Algier, if you're struggling because of Mostert, Pacheco, DeAndre Swift, all being out this week because of buys, Tyler Algier a nice replacement for them based on that matchup against the Arizona Cardinals. Now, at the wide receiver position, in my opinion, the biggest hit because of the bye weeks, right? Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle in Miami, Rashee Rice with the Kansas City Chiefs, Philadelphia Eagles, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, the Rams, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp. You're looking at about eight wide receivers who are usable, who are not now playing this week because of bye. So let's take a look at 2 wide receivers. First one in Seattle, Jackson Smith-Njigba, 4,100 on DraftKings. Sign me up for the rookie, who's averaging 8.5 fantasy points per game, but has been more and more involved each of the last 2 weeks. Washington is 30th in the league against opposing wide receivers, allowing 40.3 PPR points per game to the wide receiver position, including 13 touchdowns to wide receivers alone. Like I mentioned earlier, Washington's allowed 19 passing touchdowns, 13 of those 19 to opposing wide receivers. And like I mentioned, Washington allows 264.9 passing yards per game. The rookie is now more and more involved. 4,100 is underpriced on DraftKings. Look for him to have a nice game against the Washington Commanders. Second, in that same game, Jahan Dotson of the Washington Commanders against the Seattle Seahawks. 5,000 on DraftKings, averaging 10.1 points per game. 12 receptions with two touchdowns in his last 2 games. Over those last 2 games, a combined 44.7 fantasy points for Jahan Dotson. Seattle is 25th in the league against opposing wide receivers, allowing 37.9 fantasy points per game to the position. Of the 9 passing touchdowns Seattle has allowed, 8 of them to opposing wide receivers. Seattle allows 254.8 passing yards per game. And if there's one thing we know, Sam Howell will throw the ball all over the field without any hesitation. I expect that Seattle-Washington game to easily be a relatively high-scoring matchup, and both Dotson and Smith-Njigba to put up useful fantasy numbers. And finally, at the tight end position, whether now you've lost Dallas Goedert, whether it's Travis Kelce, Tyler Higbee of the Rams, to a lesser extent, Dalton Schultz of the Houston Texans. 4 games of 10 or more fantasy points, yet he's under 5,000 on DraftKings. He's priced at 4,900, averaging 11.8 fantasy points per game. And he goes against the Cincinnati Bengals, a Bengals defense that is 32nd, that's dead last, against opposing tight ends. They allow 16 fantasy points per game to the tight end position, including 4 touchdowns to tight ends this season. On average, the Cincinnati Bengals allow 6.4 receptions and 66 receiving yards per game to tight ends. So even without a touchdown, that works out to be about 12 PPR points in this matchup for Dalton Schultz, who's averaging 11.8 points per game. Dalton Schultz has a floor of about 11 or 12 points this week based on those numbers. The addition of a touchdown obviously pushes that up. So to recap, my Week 10 sleeper and value plays for your fantasy football season: quarterbacks, Brock Purdy and Geno Smith. At the running back position, Tyler Algier, Ramondre Stevenson. Running backs, Jackson Smith-Njigba and Jahan Dotson. And at the tight end position, Dalton Schultz. All right, everybody, don't forget, give me a follow on Twitter at @Aniano Fantasy, and we'll see you next time right here on RotoBaller Radio.